Aloha everyone! We are here in splendid Bali, Indonesia. Pear and I are delighted that you can join us this awesome summer evening wherever you are.
Aloha to all! We are staying at the Uluwatu Surf Villas. This place is pure heaven. The hotel grounds are a tropical wonderland, and each villa has a unique layout in a private garden setting. The villa we are staying at is private with ocean view. We have a private pool, outdoor shower, and a massive tub. The staff is extremely attentive and go above and beyond to make you feel comfortable. The food is healthy and delicious with plant-based options. The breakfasts are over the top, with each dish being created with amazing flavors. The restaurant is excellent and innovative, with a wide selection of around-the-world classics with their own twist. The panoramic views and magnificent sunsets are truly magical. The yoga classes add to the blissful atmosphere here. Please enjoy this lovely webinar from us.
Thank you very much for attending our first webinar on the parables of your life. On the screen is this beautiful picture of a pool of water from Mana Uluwatu at the resort that we're staying at. It spoke to Asur'Ana in that moment to say, it's important to stand in your truth in life's journey. Standing in your truth is a very fundamental system of archetypal knowing, and the archetypes are asserting their own polarities now. There has been an attempt to open up archetypal polarities. Archetypal polarities syncopate you into your own truth of your own sturgeon of self. Is called sturgeon of self that the archetype generates in polarities of its own. The whole oligarchy society has programming that affects you, but if you are seated in your own archetypal systems, then the polarity no longer disturbs you because their polarities are of their society, and you as a seed have your own poles that navigate you generally in the middle path of life. The middle path is always best because the middle path causes abundance, a sense of freedom, and a sense of an ability to change what you need to change. The archetypal patterns foster your assemblage points to align with the journey to time that is of the middle. Most of us have been inside not the middle path but the oligarchy system of a fundamental of polarity where it swings from times of graciousness without really bloom, and sometimes into times of feeling dejected or deserted or lost, and then back again, and it goes back and forth. Inside your own archaeology, you wouldn't have those deep twists or turns on your path. It would be in one general direction of the middle road that would sustain you probably throughout the life. See, societies are like that. They don't have the extremes that we knew on this planet. And so, as your C system has opened up into the correct middle path pole for you, your assemblage points will work better. This has been a jurisdiction of the C Dao to try to open or foster so that you can live your truth for the gestation of your life, and into the completion of your life, you will transform in your homecoming to going home within your own polarities through time, which is important because a middle path polarity isn't going to create some extreme notion of death, like an accident or a severe disease or some other occurrence. That wouldn't be true for your own nature. So the middle path is a better path for all of you, and that is opening now unto you. All the preparation we have done with assemblage points and other things to lead to this moment is helpful to your own planting of yourself in another notion of seed polarity, and societal programming moves to the side. That's very helpful to all of you because as societal programming moves to the side, you'll be freer to live your truth without fostering the dance that the society would want to throw at you through others, through family, through work, through friendship, through marriage, through children, through grandparents, however it may work. And that enables you to stand more freely in your truth about who you are and what you really want to do with this life. If what you're doing with this life isn't for you or isn't right for you in some way, and there are times we accept things in life and do them because we think we need to, and we don't really know how to go about rearranging it or changing it in the immediate sense of what am I to do? What am I to do if this foundation of who I am and what I'm living isn't really the truth of me and I want to do something else? How do I go about doing something else within myself that allows me to go experience my truth in a job change or a regional change of where you're living, or some other change, perhaps in or out of partnership, or in or out of family, or in or out of friendships that don't work for you? We share that with you because truth is also like a foundry issue of, are you planted where you really need to be? Are you planted with who you need to be with? Are you planted in the right occupation? Are you planted where you want to be? Are you planted in a region that brings you joy? These are all things you can examine, and we've pontificated over them in certain systems of webinars you've been enjoying. Please thank the Dao and Tao of the seas for allowing the healing to unfold for each of you as you attune to these sessions, and know that the healing is beautiful and that you will succeed at what you wish to do through time ahead. As sea systems open, there is a gallantry that returns to your own issues of you. Gallantry is a seed notion that life should be gallant, should be beautiful, should allow you to bloom into who you are and share of your gifts and talents with others who appreciate it and want to participate in that dance. And that's a strong sea notion that is there with all seas, because in societies of seas, that's how life changes and dreams or the community are fostered. somebody gallant rises to the occasion and says, "Oh, let's create another train stop over here so we can enjoy the tundra or build more houses in another region." Or somebody gallant steps to the parade and says, "Let's organize new systems of education for the children." Or somebody gallant steps up to the plate and says, "We need better understanding of partnership and marriage, and I'll be a teacher of that because I understand it." Or somebody gallant steps to the plate and says, "I'm going to cook for anybody who wants to. And we're going to create a major restaurant of very interesting substances that nourish you and tastes that delight you, and something beautiful in a place you can visit with one another and not have to prepare your own food. That's normally how seed society blooms, and the healers form some kind of doctrine notion of you can come here to be healed or work with in some way if you're not feeling well. And so it goes. Each avenue of expression opens up, including music and entertainment, and usually they're not with media broadcast, because in some creations there's actually no metals. So on some planets there are no metals, and usually that leads to an indigenous society that lives in caves or build structures out of wood that are easy, like Lincoln log cabins. They live that way, but they have an elaborate sense of creational theory and have their festivities and their gadgets and instruments that are sacred in their desire to be a part of the world, each of each other in different ways, and that's what drives that kind of indigenous society forward. If the planet has metals, generally they figure out how to create instruments that lead to trains or steam engines of some sort to drive carts, and often glass becomes able to be blown eventually to allow for windows or mirrors or other things in this society. A lot of times, high-tech gadgetry isn't a part of the dream of the Tao of such a place, so they stopped short of something like cell phones or computers, because in their own way they want to preserve the environment, as often those kinds of creations destroy the environment, not just due to radiation, but what they have to harvest to put them together. That has happened to this poor planet, and we need to bless it in the theory of love of the seas for a creation that we didn't have or couldn't experience here, that we would want to, that was maybe simpler and leads to more of a sense of truth and heart space, and a state of abundance that's natural, and share it with each other. But in your own system of seed, you can go into that middle path of abundance and live that way from now on, and that may lead to other things you desire to change or do in your life that are very beautiful. So we bless you today where we share with you the storyline parables of standing in your truth. Now, standing in your truth is a fable of Castaneda. It's a dream you can spin, and the dreams should spin like a revolving door in the core of your body, which is known as your spinal column. So, in the spinal column, we're going to see a revolving door that allows you to change dreams at your own will if they're not working for you. As you revolve the doors 360 degrees, another fable unfolds within you and then is projected out into the individuals that you participate or dance with in this life of yours. And if you don't like the dream that unfolds, then you can flip it again to see another dream spin that perhaps you like better. And if in your own heart you're saying, I need something that harmonizes and creates peace or creates a circumstance where we all understand one another, then you focus on that as you flip your revolving door of dreams to spin differently for you with others. And that's how it works always with Castaneda fables. Now, Castaneda himself was really gifted with revolving doors. This man had 24 different systems of changing dreams and then transfiguring on top of them to create mystical and magical moments, or even moments where he would disappear in time and nobody could find him in his own home, let alone out in the public. So he was very gifted with Castaneda fables and ran all of them through time and learned which ones he preferred in romance or in other systems of himself. He was a gifted wizard in his own way. We can bless him through time as a seed that incarnated and tried many things but was very gifted with Castaneda fables. And his books emulate that some. So in this parable, and Yogananda would call them parables, Castaneda would call them storylines. I don't care which word you use, choose the one that is better for you. If you align your storyline, then you're going to change the storyline as you revolve your revolving door of the fable you're going to live today. If you like parables because you're more Ananda-oriented, and that's true for Asur'Ana, then you're going to change your parables for what you're going to dream stream with others today. And that's how it works. Switching it from positive to negative to positive is an interesting feat all of its own. So let's say you're in the negative parable today, and you're not standing in your truth, and you're not sharing of what you should, and you don't know how to even present it, and you're frightened too because the boss is angry, or something went wrong in the department, or your mother's having a conniption, or your child's having a temper tantrum, or whatever's going on with your friend is just too much. You don't know how to speak it from your heart or any place at all. Or maybe you're even a little ticked off that the circumstance has revolved this way. So what you're in need of first is centering yourself. So my recommendation is, if you're in the middle of a strifeful moment and you don't know exactly what you want to say, don't try to speak it. Take time to meditate upon it and see exactly where you're at in relation to the circumstance you're in. Then when you plot your dream to go share of your truth or say what you need, then you shift gears in you and revolve the door with the individual you need to stand in your truth within. And you roll in a Castaneda storyline or a Yogananda parable that says, I'm in my truth with you for you to understand me and me to understand you in graciousness and peace. So we can align our minds to do something beautiful together, in which my truth can be and yours can be too, and we'll be at peace with whatever decisions we make beyond that. That's the primary parable involved in standing in your truth. That's an Ananda version. Now Castaneda version does the same thing. The Castaneda version is, I am the one of myself who wishes to stand here and present myself in my truth. And I love you always, and I'll be here for you always, and we'll understand each other from a heart-mind space of contemplated non-anger in a truth that I can share and you can be with. And then I can rearrange my assemblage point to motion in another direction with you. So that's how the Castaneda storyline system changes your truth action as you revolve the door to say, I have to stand in my truth here. And in the parables, it's different, but it has the same effect. If you're more Castaneda oriented, then you use the I am approach. If you're more Yogananda oriented, you use the Yogananda approach. Now here's the thing about this. It's not a choice of yours. It's really a choice of the seed, because the seed knows what you align to archetypally speaking. Some align to the Yogananda parable, while others align to the Castaneda system. Yogananda is a figurehead of realization, and you think of that as I am, and actually realization isn't about I am theory at all. It's about something else called understanding self in itself and through itself, and what it did through time, and other things that you need to realize about self, that's a whole other complex subject we're not going into today, thank goodness. So here we go. In the truth system, there are 4 things to witness always. One is, who are you in the manner of what you're trying to ask for or change in your life? Who are you to you about what it is that you need to speak about your truth? If you're feeling infringed upon by someone, then you need to tell them to back up in some gentle way. If you're feeling smothered, perhaps you need to have them back up in another way. If you're feeling somehow vindicated by something that's either been said or judged or tried on top of you in some weird way, then you need to speak your truth about who you are in that matter too. The last thing is, who are you to the circumstance of maybe a cluster of people involved if there's more than one? Because if it's a family issue and you need to stand in your truth about something that you need or change you want to make, then the whole family really needs to be involved if the children are mature enough to understand. If it's just your spouse, then that's just for him or her, then perhaps. If it's for a boss, then it may be just for the boss. But if there's a team of people you need to stand in your truth with, then you need a parable or a storyline of many. So if it's just one, is a storyline for one or parable for one that you're standing in your truth with. If it's a group cluster, then it's a parable for the whole or a storyline for all is the way that it would be phrased. So be aware of that, because if you're just standing in your truth with a boss and there's a group of people around you, then it may seem odd to them, but what it is you're asking for, what you need or what you're asserting, because they're not into the parable or the storyline that says you get to speak your truth. And when you put them there, if it's a group cluster, they each get to speak their truth in the parable of Yogananda or the storyline of Castaneda, because everybody is equal and everybody should have a say and everybody has a right to the way they feel. Dreams can align to make it work for each once you understand the position of you, the position of the boss or the other, and the position of the whole, alright? So position is a nemesis-oriented concept that in the analysis of you have a position about something you're trying to change or augment in your life. And the position is that you need to move forward in a different direction in your truth than perhaps is naturally occurring with another, or with a group of others that you're engaged with. In needing to change the position of yourself to assert, this is what I need, and this is what I'm going to do, and also what do you need, and what do you want to do, and also what does each need, and what does each want to do. That's the mature approach to standing in your truth. Standing in your truth is never to be done out of anger or judgment or fear or abusiveness, because it won't work in the parable at all. The parable will fall apart because it's only for mature understanding of how to be present and aware and relate to people who are also present and aware when you strive to speak to them. Now, what the parable or storyline of truth does is it pushes everybody to be present in their bodies as you go to speak to them, either individually or as a group. That's very helpful because when people aren't present, they don't remember what you say, and they may not even be able to listen to you in some cases because they're too far out of body somewhere else in their world of themselves. Therefore, it draws them into their body to be aware and present of what you're trying to share. And as you do that, the group will hear you better if you're giving a lecture of some kind. So for those of you that like to present or teach, you want to teach in your truth and have everyone present to listen to it and share with it and have fun with it and spin with it, and all these things that happen in Castaneda or Ananda fables. And so teacher really of any kind should always be in a parable or storyline of truth, because when you go to speak, it's your truth that announces what it is that the focus can be or may be of either children or people or anybody else that you're leading. Any kind of leadership should really come out of a storyline of truth. Now, there will be other storylines we talked about and parables that parallel truth, and they can be entered also, but as you sit yourself to go to be the leader of the meeting or the leader of the group or the leader of the clan of your family, then you should sit yourself in a place of truth and a parable of truth and the assemblage point of truth and the storyline of truth, and then go speak what it is you need to share. So we'll leave you with those thoughts as we actually get into the stories that are negative and then positive of standing in your truth. Stories follow a particular genre that has been mapped primarily by Jaskantar in Light Wave 8, We Dream of Atlantis fable. He's a very, very gifted storyline teller in himself and would rearrange his dreams affluently in his time period in Atlantis to cause people to read his books or attend his workshops. He was gifted at putting people into a state of presence so they understood what he was speaking to, because he was extremely mental. But in this, we want to talk about a particular fable that's very negative, and it's about a very beautiful female who's raised to be kind of a nanny or a surrogate to her family. Her name is Brazilla. Brazilla is the oldest of 13 children that aren't all her mother's, but it's kind of a communal circumstance, and she's very, very much taking care of all these other auntie children. There's 9 at this time and another one to be born. She barely has time for school, and they don't care about her schooling at all because she's just there to preserve the family at age 14. All the others are under age 7, and she barely knows what to do with them all because they get so messy and into everything. She cooks and cleans them up and changes their diapers and tries to send them outside to play. But today it's raining, so she doesn't get all their raincoats on because she's not sure where they all are anymore. They're somewhere in the washer. She throws them outside and they all get wet. Now they're going to have a cold, she thinks, and then she's going to have to nurse them in bed. But you kind of think maybe it will be quieter in the house if they're all in bed with a cold. Sure enough, it does catch from one to the other, to the other, to the other, until soon the house is quiet because they're all in bed snoring. She's at peace to have a cup of coffee and think about something else to do with the rest of her life because she's not sure what to even do when she can't get her homework done or anything else because of all these kids. Some are in school and some aren't. Generally, she goes to school along with the ones that trek with her to class. Today, she's home alone with them because she's sick too, and so she says. And today is a day of really sick awareness in herself that this position of being a surrogate mother is really not good for her at all. She cries and she cries and she cries, and she doesn't know what to do to change it. It feels enforced by so many in the family, all the aunts and mothers of these children, and they all need somebody because they're impoverished. And so she doesn't have a way out of this game other than perhaps to find a boyfriend and move in with his family and leave. And she thinks and thinks about that. I need to create a boyfriend so I can move in with his family and leave. But she's never there long enough to know anybody without one of the kids running up and fondling her, jumping on her lap, or doing something else. So there's no room for the boyfriend either. She thinks and she dreams about it, and dreams about it a lot. And in the nighttime of herself, she's having orgasms with some guy that she's going to try to meet and never shows. And she's trapped on that family ranch for nearly 30 years. The kids mature and have children, and she's still nursing them yet again. She ponders her existence. Is it just to be a nursemaid to all these people? I can't stand in my truth and find a direction to motion me elsewhere that would be better for my heart, mind, and spirit. In the end, it's not just nursing children. Now she's nursing the ones that are getting old and getting too decrepit to move. So she's taking food to them upstairs and helping them get showered and dressed, and helping, and no one really ever helping her hardly ever. That's a very negative parable to fall into in Ananda system or in Castaneda system of being the nursemaid to everyone. It can play out in other ways that we will describe too, because that's one kind of story. And it happens sometimes in extended families where people need their children cared for or their elderly cared for. And if you're the one in that position, that can be a very powerless position to get out of if the whole force of the family is on top of you over it. But another negative storyline is the one that can never really rise into the truth of some kind of job or position that works for them through time. So in the negative storyline, you're there and you accept this position. It's a position of a meager pay or a meager societal position, and nobody really respects what you have to say or what you want to share. Nobody really cares how little you earned or who it is that you are to try to relate to in any kind of paradigm of anything. Maybe at home you're the big queen or king of the family, and they all love you, but at work you're the meager person who can't get anything worthwhile to do or to be or to say or to live that makes any sense or gives you any pride about anything you're trying to accomplish in this world. And if you're at school, perhaps you're a C or D student and you're failing, and the teachers just think you're proverbially too stupid. Maybe if you're in some other circumstance, you seem to fail and then you're fired, and whatever it is, the failure is a part of the script of the negative storyline of a Castaneda dream of not standing in your truth because you're not able to pull yourself into another direction where you speak your truth and you molder up and go and do what you really need to do. For the one in the wrong job, perhaps you need to get more education to boost your economy and boost your ability to be hired for a position you really enjoy. Or maybe it's something else you need to do to stand in your truth to make a change. An affiliate of ours, whom we shall name Vianna, recalls this too because she quit a job where she had a lot of travel in customer service for a company that was into telecommunications. That was a lot of fun until something struck in Vianna that this wasn't the right path of hers, and she chose to go back into the family business and let her parents retire. They didn't want to retire, and they commiserated in ways that were so unprofessional it was almost embarrassing to be around them when clients would come in and they're screaming at each other like Italian people in the backdrop of a restaurant that don't get along. And so Vianna decided over time, I have to make a change. So she told her mother one day, I'm going to get my real estate license and make a change here. Her mother thought, oh, that will be fine because we might find a property or something we might do together, as her mom always wanted to be a realtor, and that was about the only storyline Vianna could go into to make a change. So if you're in a really sick position of doing something you don't really want to do, either with family or with business or whatever it is, you have to find a compatible point of reference for the change. And that's what her storyline change illustrates. So Vianna picked a profession that her mother could agree to. It took her a year to get her license, and once she had it, and she had some money saved, she just left the family business behind in a big parade that I'm not going to do this anymore. Her mother had to hire someone else, and her brother had to take hold of everything. It was so much better for Vianna's heart and mind to do something that was more palatable to her future. And the money came, and she moved west to be away from the family. That was even better because the parable of the change out of the negative to the positive may bring a sweeping change of career, partnership, and even where you're living. And that's what she experienced as she had a new partner who was going to be her life mate. So it took Vianna west and into her fate of growing to be a spiritual teacher because it was near her psychic teacher. So she met her psychic teacher in that region. And that was needed for another parable shift for her later on. Therefore, if you're seeking a life change, you have to find what complements the circumstance you're in. One direction may complement it, and the other may not. And if you vie for the non-complementary objective, you end up staying in the negative storyline rather than surmounting it and motioning away from it and in a new direction. That's all we can speak about it. So in the case of Brazila, who needed to assert that she needed to complete her education and perhaps get paid for her services, but she never did that. She couldn't assert she needed to go to nursing school or go do something that could be professional and make her money. She just stayed in the family network and kept doing and giving little to herself. And maybe there was enough economy for food and maid's clothing, but that's all, and it wasn't particularly glamorous or fun for her, and she got stuck in it by not asserting something that matched her circumstance. So in that case, if she had gone to nursing school, she would have said to the family, "It's okay for me to be a nurse because if you need doctoring, then I'm here for that too because I'll be a professional nurse and perhaps have access to medication or whatever you may need for free." That's better for the family in the long haul so that they would agree to. They might even finance her a nursing school because it would be good for the family in the long haul for her to be a nurse. Maybe in that you get a drift of how that could work, that if you're in a predicament that doesn't seem to be right, if you pick something that parallels it to go motion up to, or something that's agreeable to the circumstance of the family or the group that you're within, then it's easy to mold up in a new direction and be supported in your stand for truth of change, okay? If it doesn't, then you end up pushed back into your circumstance and you can't ever motion away from what you're attempting to depart from. In Brazilia's case, once she becomes the nurse, then she's actually relatively well paid. Then she moves out into an apartment and she meets her sweetheart and gets married. She chooses never to have children, and that's okay with him because she makes sure to assert her truth into the dating scene. That would be the positive effect of a change of Brazilia's circumstance. When people can't make a positive change, they keep getting thrown into the negative fable over and over again until it ruptures into the middle and elder age. That can happen, and there's been movies and stories about those circumstances that are very sick to witness when people can't have the freedom to do something that they really enjoy or want to do or be paid well enough for to live more freely in this monetary society. You have to realize it is a monetary society. If Brazila was in a place like Atlantis, perhaps she'd take care of the kids for a time and then mold her up to another life of her own because it's all script-based. She's free to come and go anytime she wishes to, and everything's always provided for enough to always have a home and clothes and shoes on her feet, and she'll always have enough to drink or eat, and she'll always have enough to ride the train to get to where she really liked to go try something new. Unfortunately, we're not in that kind of society, so it's difficult unless you have a lot of savings to maybe go about a change in that nature to just scoot yourself someplace beautiful you rather live and go there. That's true for most seeds because most seeds generate just enough and not necessarily a whole lot more. And so be well with it all because seed jurisdiction doesn't want to accrue karma. If you earn too much money or you own too much, then you acquire karma, and then you have to reincarnate again in this society. Most seeds absolutely don't want to do that ever. So you live simpler lives, and you have just enough. And if you live with somebody who buys you a house or gives you something, or you inherit something, then that's okay. That's true in Pear's case, where he inherited money from his family's manufacturing business. Then it doesn't tie you to have to be on earth forever, which is one of the problems with this society. They just have to be on earth forever and reincarnate forever, and that's a very sad agreement of this particular society. So we'll tell you one more thing about changing out of the negative scripts of time. There are scripts of time that say that the negative is yours and is not in the C system, is the oligarchy society. Often they put C's in negative scripts because they don't really belong in their scripts, because you're from outside and you don't have karma really. So they just give you this negative script, and sometimes that impacts the family you were raised in. So you get a negative script with your family where your dad's abusive, or your mother's abusive, or your siblings are abusive, and there isn't a lot of care space that you feel for anything. That happens perhaps to as many as half the C's currently incarnate. The other half may be in a culture where love is more indigenous, and that's often true for Hispanic cultures, in particular, or Hawaiian cultures. They are more caring in the stature of how they nourish or nurture one another, and that may be easier for C's to be born into than some other societies that are more Western and aggressive in their ideas of what families should or shouldn't be, or with somebody who's just got a mindset disturbance. Now we're going to say something about mindset disturbances, about family members that are belligerent, or workmates or bosses that are belligerent or get angry. Generally, they have a mind disturbance, and if you can diffuse their mind disturbance, then they come down and can listen to you. So one thing that the positive storyline of standing in your truth does is diffuse the negative mind system of each that you're approaching, to tell them what you're going to do or make a change about in your life in relation to them. So then they're calmer and more able to listen to what you're choosing for, and then in that it's easier to assert that this is what I'm going to do to allow this change to come forth. Now, in a storyline fable of the work organizations that occur today, often you can look for another company and improve your circumstance of work within the profession or the line of professional training that you have received through time. And that's not a castellated storyline nor a parable of Ananda. When you go to search for a new job, it's a windfall of truth. So you're going to call that a windfall of truth. You need to find a new job, and it's a windfall of truth that you find a place that is better ordered for your dreams to unfold with more kindness, with the people you work for, people that you like rather than dislike in this world of yourself. Because you are your own world, and if you dislike people or you find them aggressive, it's not a kind place to work at all. So in the windfall of change and in the winds of time, you rearrange your future for another type of job script that works for you with people you like and that you care for and give to you something extra perhaps in their care space, because you belong in their little society of people, because you choose to in a Castaneda storyline of work fables. We'll talk about those in a whole other webinar because they are very complex. But in the windfall of change, you're standing in your truth that you don't like the organization you're working for, you don't like what you're doing, and you need to do something else. Then you go into the winds of time and you rearrange your dreams to be suitable in a parable of Ananda that says, we're going to be like soul family when I find the right work, or in a parable of Castaneda that says, I am fruitful and adventurous and accepted and cared for in this work fate of mine. So in that, you choose a new direction. Now sometimes the new direction may involve education where you go back to school for a time. If you go back to school, it needs to be something you really want to do, or an outcome of something you really want to contribute to your life. And B, you want the right school, or a place that you can feel resonant or indigenous in, that nurtures you in some way into your new aspiration of whatever you're going to do ahead. So in the winds of change and then standing in your truth, I need a new career, or I need a new job, or I need a new focus in my life would be the way that they would put it in another society that was more script-oriented. That can include taking a truth for something you need to create within your own life. I mean, maybe you need to open up to your artistic expression, or maybe you need to open up to a capability of doing something else that's amazing, perhaps in the kitchen, and cooking something else that's unusual and good for you. Or perhaps another aspiration of something else you would like to go learn or participate in this world of creative aspirations of the athletic kind. Bike riding, tennis, swimming, boating, learning to fly, or something else that you really think would be fun to go do in this life of yours. So the winds of change can include objectives that are also more personal, that you want to add to your life, that makes it more glorious to be alive. I mean, why are we alive if it isn't to be glorious and to do all the things that are wonderful and fulfilling to accomplish? Some of them don't cost very much, and some of them, even education, may be financed, maybe in some way. A change of jobs could include a headhunter if you're gifted in a particular profession, and in the winds of change, the headhunter has to align with you to derive the type of job that you're going to create for yourself that works for you. So whatever it is that you aspire to, the change has to be positive and not negative for what you're going to aspire to go do. Here we can relay Viona's experience. She became a realtor and it gave her a relatively good economy. Her mother bought her a townhouse because she had to buy something, and so that was easier for her to live in. And in that, she found her psychic teacher, and her real passion was everything she was looking at in the world wonder of Berkeley Psychic Institute, and people and so on. And that was her real passion. But the real estate provided her time because it is like being self-employed, and she'd go to her open houses with metaphysical books to digest, and later attended a lot of other classes in the psychic fair of herself. And that all aligned to another objective, to change something else later when she became a spiritual teacher of her own. When things align, it aligns up for the entire lifeline and not necessarily just for today, because you as a seed may have many goals or objectives other than what you're doing, okay? In wherever you're working on or living within in terms of your occupation. Now, if you're in school, then school has an objective too, which is to graduate you. And if you're in a program where you can go on to a higher or more advanced degree, perhaps that is your truth, or perhaps it isn't. You have to assess that if you're in school. If you go in for a higher degree, then that may be really beautiful for you, and to foster that if that's your truth. If you have graduated and you want to change and want to go back to school to get a higher degree, then you should. Don't deny yourself the pivot points of change in this society. There are 3 pivot points of change. One is to go back to school because the school opens up new dream stream for new adventures, new highlights, and new options that you can motion towards. They give you a new future. So education will cause that. Even adult education can cause that in junior college kind of circumstances in addition to universities. Then there is the job change circumstance of what you call headhunting, or looking for a new corporate circumstance to go work for, a new system that you've already participatory for to go work under, and that can create a breeze of change too, but not like education where you get to do something new. But there's a third avenue, and that is to understand yourself enough to go do something that's meticulous in your life that agrees with you, and be at peace about the rest of everything else. So sometimes people choose their careers because they need the economy of it, and then they go take their holidays, or they do something that they really feel passionate about in other avenues of expression. Work is just an avenue of money to the bank account and pay the mortgage or rent or whatever you have to do with it. Work may not be the centrifugal dream for your life understanding either, because it has no spiritual focus. sometimes even in circumstances of psychological focus. People who grow to be psychologists are in an avenue of healing of some sort, such as massage or acupuncture or naturopathy, may feel more at home in these systems than most other preoccupations. However it is, you can still study these things as a secondary understanding of education for yourself, and it may bridge into something else that's beautiful. Some might like to be natural ministers where they share of their understanding of the world with others. And if that's true, then you should get your ministerial license and go do that. Because in this society, if you become a minister, the dream may open up more to you to foster that avenue of expression. So in the society, it has its ways and it has its place. You have to reorganize it to work for you. So I'm going to change photos now here. Now, this is a ridge in Australia that was very beautiful at the base of the Blue Mountains in a valley that was very gracious and had a really nice little cafe to dine in. Per took a picture of the birch trees against the mountainside, and the birch trees say to Asur'Ana, "One of your students is about to have a major life play change. I advise her to stand tall in her truth, and don't be there to be rendered into despair or a misdirection that doesn't work out for her through time." We will share of this student's story later on in this webinar. Trees have a lot of wisdom, and we love trees, and we love nature, and we love many things as seeds. We love nature for sometimes mirroring to us our own graciousness or our own delusion as well. So here's our position about life change. When you stand in your truth, you have to be ready for what that does to others that maybe rest on top of you in some way, that you can't get out from under their system of where they have put you into a seeming box to live your life because they need you there, because that's comfortable for them and maybe not comfortable at all for you. That's what we'll speak to next, okay? And we can go back to the Brazilia's story. Brazila wants to become a nurse now, and she's 19, and she needs to go off to college. It's a 2-year college, and she wants a 4-year degree. The family says, "No, you can only have a 2-year degree and be an assistant nurse and not a real nurse." Brazila doesn't stand in her truth in that moment, but she realized her dreams to go to the 4-year college instead because it's actually closer. So she can drive there every day and drive home and not have to live in a dormitory or something that costs the family more. So because of that, they agreed to the 4-year college, and she just keeps going and going until she graduates, then procures a very nice paying job and moves closer to the hospital and away from the family journey forever. That's the ideal arrangement of it, but they wouldn't have agreed to it unless she could drive to and from the campus. She found herself over time spending a lot of time in the library and drinking coffee and wanting to eat out but not having enough money to do so. And so she procured a little system of job on campus, and that worked for her to have part-time work. And then she could spend a little money on food that she needed to nourish her mind and study her courses and pass her tests. So in the ideal circumstance, things open up as you choose for the change, and you don't know how it's perhaps necessarily going to work out. So she starts her classes, and she doesn't know how it's going to work out. And suddenly, she finds out that the bookstore needs support. So she applies for the position, and it's granted to her. So now she has some work, and she rearranges her life to be mostly on campus, even though she goes home at night to sleep. That works out for her somehow because she has a whole new life, and she meets new people, creates new friends, maybe even calls a boyfriend to her while she's in school. And if he wants to marry her, perhaps that works out. So things happen when you choose for a change. Things won't happen if you don't choose for a change. But your storyline has to align with your own credentials or your own capabilities. And if you don't have enough credentials for what you're aspiring to in some way, even though you hold on to the vision, the truth is, in the oligarchy society, it failed. Now you think about it in many ways, but I will tell you this about Asur'Ana. Like our above story of Vienna, Asur'Ana is also a graduate of the Berkeley Psychic Institute. She had the backdrop of Berkeley Psychic Institute behind her to give her a dream as a teacher, and that still hears some because she was a graduate of the institute in addition to having her bachelor's in psychology. So here's the ticket for those of you that want a spiritual quest as a spiritual counselor or something else. Go get your ministerial license, and then the oligarchy society will align your dreams better to grow in a direction that can gather people to you to foster them if that's one of your life goals. You can be a minister and do whatever you do in this world, including hold another job, because there's no limit to what you can cause for yourself as a seed in this life of yours. So here's another thing to think about. Why is it in the oligarchy society you need a degree of some kind, whether it was you're a minister of Berkeley Psychic Institute or you're a psychologist? Why would she need that to succeed in this role of guiding anybody? Well, it's just that way with the dreams of the society. You need certification, or you need something to state that it's okay for you to do this. That's a weird system, but it's just the way that it works, and you can't change the societal dreaming of anything you want to try. It has to fit into the societal dream, or it's never going to work out. And so whatever your occupation is, If you don't like it, go get another degree and go do something else. If you want to grow to be a healer or counselor of spiritual focus, then go get your ministerial license. There's lots of things online now that are probably easy to foster, and maybe that's better for you because in the certification somehow then the dream opens up to do something with it in some other way you're not expecting. I don't know what else to say about other occupational changes except generally you need degrees of some sort to say you're qualified to do that, unless it's experience that has caused you to grow in a particular direction and you have enough experience that people are willing to hire you for that kind of position, and so on. We're going to talk about now one more negative script that's sometimes very difficult to get out of, and is a spousal script. In work scripts, you can get out of the negative dream stream by looking for another job and applying for it, or by re-educating yourself, and then it can go from negative to positive. If you assert positive people to be within your next job that adore you and all these things, then that's the way of aligning in Ananda parables or Castaneda parables always. Within your own self, if you're uncomfortable with your company, then choose a career path that pays more and educate yourself in it, and go in that direction so that you have some money to travel or do other things you really enjoy in this lifeline of yours. But with partnership, it can be a very sick fable sometimes if you really don't understand each other through time. And that this Valley was speaking about a student of Asur'Ana Empire's Dreamtime Ascension School, or DAS. We shall call this student Chi-Chi. Chi-Chi's partner, Ross, didn't understand her dedication and focus on her ascension path. She had cleared enough of the karma with Ross through ascension that she chose to separate from him and continue on her spiritual path alone. And that's a major pebble change for partnership. Gigi needs to separate from him and motion forward. She made that clear one time to Ross, and he hit her and knocked her out on the floor. So this is the thing about that kind of change. If you need to leave somebody behind, they can get very aggressive even when you speak your truth gently and put them in a fable line where they understand because they're angry about something that they can't quite describe in themselves about the change. Many of you would probably understand that because Ross loved her very much, but she couldn't remain with him. So if you're facing a partnership change, then you can enter it now with us during this webinar. And remember that what you're going to do is finally speak your truth, that you have to go. You have to depart this. It's not working for you, and you need to call to yourself a future that can allow for that. The future that allows for that should be free of their aggression or rage or whatever else may transpire. If you're married, it could lead to an ugly court case where you have to pay more than you really want to the family circumstance, or whatever might happen there, and those are the kinds of fables you want to cancel. Gigi did try to cancel the violence that Ross went into, and it didn't work. But after she passed out, she didn't wake up for nearly 3 days, and he packed up and left. And that was best for him and for her at that moment. So something about things can splinter people when they take a stand for major change. Generally, that doesn't happen in the corporate scene or with friends because they're not close to you. Sometimes it can happen with roommates if you're just not getting well enough along with them that you need them to molder on or change, and that's hard too. But when you face a partnership change, there are usually 3 scripts that get the communication across. Sometimes it's easier if you've already moved out. So that's the first script that you can laugh about. So okay, I'm just going to move out, and then you pack your bags and you go. And then on your cell phone you call them up and say, guess what? We're through and I want a divorce, or I'm leaving you, or whatever you're going to say to them. Now, if you're in your own space and they don't know where you're staying, perhaps that's easier for you. But either case, it may be a shock, and if you're married, it may still involve an attorney or something else to try to sort things through. So that's the first possibility of leaving your beau or your beloved or your spouse or whatever it is. The second possibility is one of a mutual agreement where you both say, it's not working out and I need something else and you need something else, and we can be kind to each other, but we need to go. Now that scene actually happens with another student of ours, Heather, where Heather's partner was the father of her child. They mutually agreed that he had to go and she needed a life on her own, and that they would split the custody to begin with, and later he took it on full force because that's what he really wanted to do. And he really loves being a father to this day, and that's best for him. So the mutual agreement is a very nice castanedated fable for a breakup of a union or a marriage or a family or whatever it is. Then later on there was mutual agreement that Heather would never pay any child support, and that came in the custody papers because he didn't want her as a crazy woman to see the child again. And that worked out really beautiful for her economy because that wouldn't have been right for her from a C system at all, to be indebted to something she wasn't going to really motion with ever again. So that was a mutual agreement too that worked out very well for Heather in a castaneda's fable of he's your kid and keep him. Therefore, if you have that kind of circumstance, you can try that fable and work your way out of custody support. But if you're going to see your kids, probably that's not going to be true. So in that kind of fable, you have to really divorce your child along with your partner. And for some of you, you love your kids. So that would never be what you would ever choose for. See? And so the other thing we can tell you about is that in that court case, you have a fable to be agreeable and fair. That's the one to roll into if you're faced with an attorney who's asking for too much support or too much of this or that or too much of the assets. Some places have a mutual half-half kind of consideration to everything, others may not. Sometimes people really feel the need to have all of it, and that's a weird position, but in the truth of it, it should be probably half and half from a C system point of view. So the Ananda or Castaneda fable is a 50-50 deal. You get half the assets. I get the other half. You get the kids half time. I get the kids half time. And then it all works out. That's the Castaneda storylines for divorce. And maybe that will work for you. Some time ago, Asur'Ana and Pear met this really beautiful seed working at a bank that they bank at, and she said, "That was really amazing. I felt I left my husband and married a new man, and my former husband left and married a new woman. Now between the four of us, we have 6 kids, and we spend the holidays together because we love each other." Now, is that a C divorce or what? Because you want everybody to get along, and it really worked for her, and she got the Castaneda fable of amicable settlement of everything and then kinship to follow. We thought that was a very unique fable for her to live in this life of hers, where all the kids get along and they have one big Brady Bunch family kind of action where everybody's together sometime in the year and especially over the holidays. So Castaneda fables do play out over seed, and sometimes you don't even know why life arranges itself in a particular way. But for those of you that have amicable marriages where you really care for each other and you're very blessed and lucky to be living the Castaneda fable or the Ananda fable of the love of the two. Yogananda would call it love of the two, and Castaneda would call it complementary partnership, where you complement one another in most ways. And then there's nothing to argue about or say anything about because you just get along. Sometimes you see twins, and sometimes it sees and ceilings that partnership together, and usually they do complement if they can catch a Yogananda or a Castaneda fable for themselves. Now Pear and Asur'Ana caught the love of the two fable from Ananda, as well as complementary partnership fable from Castaneda, and so they sway beautifully together most of the time. In the partnership of Chi and Ross that we have shared earlier, they only caught the love of the two fable from Ananda. Ross could sway beautifully for most of the time with Chi until he got sick. Sickness is not a part of a Castaneda fable because in Castaneda land you transfuse and the body doesn't get ill, and if it chooses to depart this world due to something else, it fasts and it goes. So that's the way the castaneda's fable plays out. And obviously for us, love of the two fable couldn't carry on if he was getting sick, because he would have to transfuse through his disease. And there was no way for him to do that at that point in his life due to the things that were immeasurably problematic for his body. So we'll say that to you, for anybody facing your partner who passes, that can be a difficult choice. Do you stay there and try to nurture them through their rite of passage, or do you go on to something else in your life? And it may not be right for a seed to stay with a dying person or even a dying family member. Now, Brazila would get sick nursing her parents in that story fable of having to take care of them, because in her own light wave motion, the disease is sour, and then it sours her field until she grows ill and dies like they do. That's not a Castaneda story fable, it's a negative one. And so if you're faced with dying parents, let your siblings or someone else take care of them, or put them in a home and let the nurses take care of them to understand how to separate their fields from dying gates, and all these things that are very dark and dense that you can't transfuse into without making yourself sick. That's a whole other story, especially if your spouse is getting ill. What do you do with him? Some of you would probably stay to nurture your ill spouse through to the end. Some of you would probably want to molder on and cause a new life of your own. And sometimes that's painful to them if you have to walk away when they're the one in need. But you may not be well if you have to stay near a dying body as you transfuse. We don't know what else to say about it, but it's a very weird society where death is an action of freezing the physical until it no longer moves, and then they finally pass. And if you transfuse next to that, you would wobble into a disease often in a relatively short time. So it's not a society of light, and that's the problem. And you are a society of light in yourself as a seed. So it's a very different jurisdiction of life than perhaps would be had in another circumstance where you were a part of the society. They have their death rhythms in the society, but they are changing with the light wave mind children and teenagers who say, no, we need to transfuse in our closure and not be frozen to death because that's very painful. So they are changing things in Sosa dreaming for death to be a transfusion release, which is a relief maybe for the next generation, and not your parents, and perhaps not your spouse if you're older. It's hard to say. In any case, everybody is unique unto what they can and can't handle. Therefore, we just share that with you because there is a Castaneda fable of you're dying and I'm not. We depart because we can't be together, because I can't go where I need to as a seed otherwise, and that's all. So this is the fable that Gigi went into, and it triggered the closure of her partnership because she couldn't be with Ross and next to him in death. Another person moved in that cared for Ross a lot, and so they molded up together, and she cared for him to the end of his death, and that was a person in the society that could handle it physically when Gigi could not. So whenever you close a door, there's always another door that opens to take over the position of need in the other person's life. So whatever it is, when you close a door, another door opens, and people find their way in a different parade that's similar, and they'll go in that direction because they need that in their lives. Now, Gigi left her parents to embark on her ascension journey a decade ago. When she left, her father was dying. Her sister-in-law stepped into the role of Gigi to be there near him and help him through that time period. So it was a sister-in-law that took over Gigi's position, because when you close a door, another door will open to another person to help them. So don't be afraid to close the door if you need to make a change in your life on someone that isn't right for you to be near anymore, because it gobbles your genetics and it doesn't make you feel well due to their own life circumstance of disease. That's important even with parents, and Per knew that because his father's heart attack breached into his chest for a time until he moved to another region that better supports his ascension, and then it motioned off. So sometimes a big change needs to occur if a family member is infringing on you about their death, and this is an odd thing with parents. Sometimes they want to die into you as a seed or a partner, and Per's father wanted to die into him, and so Per left. The oligarchy society dies into each other because they don't know where to go to cross. C's know where to go to cross because you have your own system that's a part of your C casing, is part of your own reality. So be aware of people that are older that may wish to die into you or die into your life, and what happens can be a lot of emotional sourness until you move them completely out of your timeline and field. If you're a nurse or if you work with people who are ill or dying, don't worry about it because your boundaries keep that part of that structure in the family system, so they don't die into the nurse, they die into the family in most cases. That's a hard position, but nurses know how to structure it so that they are not injured along with doctors, and that's better because there's so much death often associated with hospitals or medical systems in general. So we won't speak about that anymore, but there is a Castaneda fable to depart those that are dying in close proximity, so they can be with who they need to in the oligarchy society, so that they can be nurtured and you don't take on their death ribbons. And so we'll just state that. The last thing that can happen is sometimes the need to depart a friend or someone you have been close to for a time because your life changed warrants it. This happened with Asur'Ana and her psychic teacher, Victoria. We're using these because we used castaneda's fables all along to change her life path or script, and she was to emerge as the teacher, and the teacher of her wouldn't allow for it. So the teacher had to depart in some other manner and let Asur'Ana bloom in her own way, and it happened not with any kind of argument. There was just a certain shift of assemblage points, and suddenly Victoria needed to be with another in the position of Asur'Ana, who took on that graciously. And Asur'Ana left, and they never spoke to each other again. They had been very close for nearly 7 years, and that sounds odd, but once the fable clicked in, it just went in the right direction for both. That's what we can say about changing a kinship fable where the friend is just not really working for you somehow, or blocking something you wish to do in your life, and you can't rise into your truth and take a stand for where you're going because of either their negativity or their ability to damage your dream change. When you're going to stand in your truth and you're going to make a dream change, whether it's for a new job or a new career, a new partner, or a new place to live, or something else you might want to change, there may be somebody that obstructs that change in your life. They keep damaging the dream until it can't unfold or flux or move forward, in which case you may have to separate from the individual in some manner to allow your dream to come forward of your truth of change that you need in your life at this time. There's a parable for that, and it's in the Yogananda sector, but there's also a Castaneda storyline for it. And in the parable of the change, and this is the one that Asur'Ana lived with Victoria, her psychic teacher, it is just that there is a time for our kinship, and there's a time not for kinship. Now, out of deep care of you and deep care of me, we go on our separate paths. I love you always as the star seed of me. That's the Ananda version, and Victoria received that, caught it, felt it, and departed her life. In the Castaneda storyline of that kind of departure is, you're a friend of mine that's no longer true to me in my heart or mind, and I need to let you go to the winds of time. That's how the Castaneda storyline aligns for letting go of a friend that isn't right. When the dream kicks in, they may leave your life without you saying anything, because somehow in them, they know they have to go like Victoria flew to the winds of time and left Asur'Ana's life after a long time of a sealing twin sway, because it was needed for both to gestate something new in their lives. Victoria later married the man of her heart, and that might not have happened as long as Asur'Ana was in her life. So there's always positive outcomes to change that you don't always know until it's lived, you see, in the life of each. So standing in your truth and knowing when it's time to align a change is a whole other story. So we're going to speak to that a little bit out of a positive story we're going to tell you. Brazila became the nurse and went off to live her new life and found her spouse and didn't have children. Well, that all is beautiful for her, and maybe the two of them moved to another beautiful part of Brazil because that's where they're living, because they can afford it, and buy a flat that overlooks the beach, and she's happier yet in everything she's doing. That would be the positive ending of the Brazila's story. Here's another story fable that can give you a gist of the use of the winds of time to allow change to blow through you and another. Now, the winds of time can be related to the winds blowing in a region. Usually, when the winds of time blow in the region, they're erratic. It's like they move this direction and then they quiet down, and then they move this direction and that way, and then they quiet down. So it's really sweet when the winds of time do blow through, and it allows you to understand that in the winds of time. And as you enter it, you are more free to let go of what you don't need from a truth aspect of yourself. So in the winds of time is a parable from Castaneda that you are everything that ever was and ever is and ever will be. And in the winds of time, you can change anything that you need to, and you can grow in a direction that's more divine or more sublime and away from something that's less than wonderful for you to experience. Never deny yourself the winds of time to blow yourself in a new direction if life is growing bored or something else isn't working out for this truth of yours. And that's how we would phrase it. So in this story, there's a very handsome male that's not young. He's in his 60s and he's looking for a new partner. He has in mind exactly what he wants because he's had 3 marriages and has 2 children, and he knows all about that. But he's looking for, in the winds of time, a bride and a beloved that will be here through his end of time. Now, the end of time for a seed is that you give closure to life through transfusion. So he wants a transfusion partner to be there for him to the winds of time, to give closure to his life in a sublime manner, perhaps in 10 years, perhaps less, but he doesn't desire to be ill. His name is Beau, and he is a very gracious Frenchman. He was very tall and willowy and is bald now. He shaves his head, and that's very handsome. He wears an earring on the other side because he knows he's not gay. He does meet his divine princess, and she's quite a bit younger. She's in her 30s, and she's very gracious, and she wants a place where she can nest and be free from the workscape of society. She's not in an amazing profession, but he offers her the opportunity to go to school, and he'll finance it, and she can grow in a new direction she's very much aspiring to in her heart and mind. She is a gifted musician and singer, and so he says, well, go to music school then. And so she does, and they marry in short order. They're very happy in their homestead, and it's in a beautiful place in France along the Mediterranean. She is a singer, and he invites her in his hometown to approach several of the tavernas that are very beautiful to sing her songs and play her guitar. Lo and behold, 3 nights a week she's performing, and he generally walks down the beautiful pathway against the pounding surf and goes to sit and listen to his beautiful wife sing her truth. All her songs are about the truth of her heart and his desire for another world that isn't here on this planet at all. He loves her music, and he loves her mind, and he loves her body too, and they are quite a bit different in age, but she doesn't mind him at all because he motions so much light. To her, he looks only 45. People compliment and grace their lives until one day his daughter decides to move home and tries to break the marriage up, and almost succeeds because she's just about to pack her bags, his little princess, and leave. So finally, she flips the fable one last time and takes a stand of truth with Bo and says, "Bo, I can't live with your daughter in this home. I don't care for her at all. She disturbs me all the time, and I find myself angry at her all the time, and I need to move. If you can't move her out, I have to leave. And I very much apologize about that because I love you very much and I have to go." And he says, "My sweetheart, where are you going to go?" She says, "I found a job on campus and I'm going to move into the dorm system because there's a place for me there as a graduate student." Therefore she goes and she blows with the winds of time because she knows that the daughter is making her very sick in her mind and in her body too. She feels freer on campus and somehow unburdened, and life is much better, although she misses Bo. He can't seem to get his daughter to move out of the house as she has nowhere to go. And so life changes in the direction of the purge of our young princess who's named Louise. Louise loves being a musician, and soon she's playing on campus too, and people adore her. Sometimes she just takes her guitar out and opens the case, and people throw dollars or coins into her velvet guitar case, and she's very happy to take home enough to maybe go buy herself a nice meal here on campus. And so Louise loves her music and loves her truth and loves everything about it. In the end, she procures some money from her marriage because he's going to give her an alimony of sorts, and that improves her economy. Bo longs for her to return home and suddenly dies of a major stroke at the midnight hour of himself. That's how seas often go, and she knows in her heart that's best for him too, because she blew out of his life so that he wouldn't die into her, and she could cause something beautiful to arise for herself. And so in the end, she finds another musician, and they do form a duo of duets that are very beautiful and lyrical. He learns all his songs and he doesn't compose. Suddenly they create 4 albums, and the albums are popular all over the countryside, and they all love them very much. Soon they decided to create a concert, and they hire a small auditorium, and it fills up, and she's absolutely amazed at the numbers on their show and the tickets of their parade set aside, some for a holiday if they choose for it. And so she flies herself somewhere to Greece. She doesn't perform, it's just to rest. He doesn't come with her because they're not beloveds. He flies somewhere to Spain to see a new girlfriend he's dating on the internet. The 2 of them carry on in their duet until her next husband, Francois, shows up. He's a very, very gifted engineer, and he attends her concerts 3 times. Francois longs to meet her and somehow manages to get back to the party that she throws at the end of the evening after each concert, for those that supported her in some way to get there. They dine and they wine for 3 months, and he proposes. Louise accepts because she longs for the security of a partner. He's very kind to her and has built an amazing home overlooking the cliff of the ocean on the Mediterranean beach there in France. She moves in and feels quite at home, as if Francois built this home just for her. There's a place Louise can sing her music, and it echoes throughout the whole home because of its own acoustics, and he loves that and she loves that, and they are there for a long time. Her music takes flight, and soon a full band forms behind her with flutes and oboes and other things to anoint her music into deep beauty and grace. Francois wants her to be filmed for a production that shows up on television, and so he does arrange that with his own finances because she can't afford it. It does go online and it does go on the air. Louise becomes more popular and sells more of her CDs. Suddenly something else changes in her as she takes flight into the fullness of who she is. As a musician of her heart, as one of her songs hits the international marketplace as the most popular of the week or month or however that goes. She is thrilled and he's thrilled, and suddenly the fame hits, and then something else unfolds that's kind of strange because fame does something else to dreams. In Castaneda lore, the best thing to do is to be famous, not, and leave an apparition on the stage or in the videos or somewhere else and not really be in you at all, because otherwise it kills you. So Louise enters that fable and she lets the fame roll, but she stays private about her partnership. She doesn't choose to be interviewed by the magazines or the journals or nosy newspaper people. She chooses just to be as private as she can be. And it all works out in the end because she's in love with her man, she's in love with her word, and she's in love with what she created in the I am of herself. Now in Castaneda fables or Ananda fables, That dream can take flight as long as you are in your truth about everything that you choose for in your life. It is possible to live that dream. Asur'Ana and pair have more or less, and it is a parable of Ananda and a castellated system that can be in the fullness of everything you might choose to do in this lifeline of yours, as long as you're true to you. When you're not true to you, you compromise something in you, and it compromises something in your dreams. Now we're going to add one more picture to the scene here. This is a hillside and waterfall from Iceland. This hillside was way up north, several hours' drive from the hotel that pair and Asur'Ana were staying at. In it was a motion, or was a standing of something that's hard to even imagine, that this was a mountain that just flat out says, let go in the rivers of time of what's blocking your realization, and stand tall in your truth and realize yourself into this life of yours. Ahead, as it may be a difficult time period of some things that you're not understanding in your mind yet. Now, the rivers of time are a big release format, just as are the winds of time. In the rivers of time, you let go of what else the body, okay? Because your blood is your own river of time, and is there in your skin or in your body. The mountain predicted you're going to have problems with your blood and your health due to things that infringe on you too much in the whirlwind of people that you try to care for. And in the rivers of time, you will purify yourself in the phosphorus land of the Mesa. We gift to you that dream in an Ananda parable that you are infinite and can heal your body of what afflicts you. And so Asur'Ana and pair have healed themselves in phosphorus land. It was a beautiful dream that spun there for them to find their way to where they needed to live in Gold Canyon Mesa, and where they needed to be to revive their health, and that succeeded. In the waters of time, you can release those things that you need to ill health of your life ahead. The winds of time is about dream change. Sometimes you need a dream change in order to revive the body if you are with the wrong person, or in the wrong occupation, or living in the wrong region, or have an association or group of associations that aren't well for your body, mind, and spirit. Whatever it is, when you hit the rivers of time with the issue, it will bring about all the changes necessary to revive you and revive your health, if that's what you choose for. And in the truth of it, what happens is that the people that interfere with the change of direction for a restoration of health, they depart your life. If you need to move, you move, and in a stand for the truth to be free of ill health, then in the rivers of time, lots of dynamics can shift to cause you to motion in the new direction, in the truth of a biological disturbance that is complicated due to your associations or your environment or something else disturbing you through time. Health complications may not even be noticeable, but one symptom is tiredness. Per hit that heavily a couple of years ago and knew that something was wrong, and the first river of time change was a move to the Mesa region. Therefore, Asur'Ana and Per live in Mesa, Arizona for 6 months each year, and the other 6 months are spent in their home in Alta, Norway. The second river of time change was absolution, with certain people that weren't good for their body in DAS, and these students departed of their own free will choice, and that was best. The third river of time change was the infusion of phosphorus to bring back their youth, and that's what this river said to Asur'Ana and Per. So if there's something disturbing your health at this time that you need to take a stand in your truth, then wash it down the rivers of time with us today, and let it go free to where it needs to go, so you can go where you need to go in this life of yours. There are many things that can affect health in light that you're not aware of. The work environment can, if it's not the light infrastructure you need to nurture the body, and some buildings transfuse light better than others. Glass buildings transfuse light very well, so if you're in a high rise of glass, you're probably better than most things. If you're near the sea transfuses light beautifully. If you're working near the sea, then you can transfuse with the ocean and probably be well. The mountains can transfuse light beautifully. So if you're in a mountainscape or near some mountains, then you can transfuse very easily. The things that don't transfuse light very well are cement. So cement or brick buildings are the wrong place to work or live within in this time period. Stucco works, and so do things like marble and tile flooring or wood flooring work better than carpets. Whatever it is, understand that you need to be in an environment that preserves your life in health, in light. A big stand of truth for you is to examine maybe if where you're working or living is suitable to further light emotion, and if not, start to plan for a change in directions in the truth of you to go where you need to be near what you need to be to revive or preserve yourself in your health. We have another story about that's a positive parable of a castanedae land. The parable of Bo and his wife Louise is really an Ananda system of truth, of expression of yourself in the fullness of the flower and the joy of life. Within Castaneda, his story is a little different because his fable is about a circumstance, not just of ill health, but things that can demean or diminish your glow through time. So there's a beautiful woman, and I adore her very much. My name is Sven, and Sven means many things because I'm Swedish. She is there and I'm there, and soon we're engaged. I'm in love and she's in love, and we moved to a little palace of wood near the forest and the lake that I adore. I am a pseudo-musician in myself, but really that's just my passion, and what I do for my work is manage a lumber yard that's part of my family inheritance. The wood comes and goes, and I'm often covered in sawdust. I really don't like what I'm doing at all, and I don't know how to change it because my father hasn't died yet. I'm working for him daily, and he just makes me burp half the time as he criticizes me in every way he can. You're just not good enough. You're not the thing I needed as a son. I don't know what to do. You can't manage the business well enough. The whole experience was making me sick, and so I decided to put my resume together because I had managed this business for a long time. I found a job as a manager over a system of building construction supplies, and it was a big warehouse. And now I'm managing 40 people when at home I've been managing only 10. And that was okay for me, and suddenly I was happier. My dad was very upset at my departure, but it was making me so sick. I couldn't even bear to see him, and I didn't even care at this point if I inherited the business at all. I would just want to sell it off, and so that's what I suggested to him. Just sell it off, put the money in the bank, and retire because you're not happy. Then over one belabored Christmas meal that my beautiful new wife cooks for everybody, there's an explosion like 10 guns going off as my mother screams, my sister screams, my brother screams, and my father screams. The two of us get up, get out, and walk out of the house. We get in my car and we leave because I don't know what else to do to say to these people. They are obviously upset as to why I left the business. I couldn't understand working for my father anymore. And so it went in the parable of myself that I didn't care when they left the house. They all finished the meal right down to the bones of the turkey that she brewed in the oven, and I couldn't believe the mess that they left and didn't clean up after themselves. We vow we'd never see them again over another holiday ever. We had our lives, we had our love, we have our care, and we loved each other so very much. As we held each other in bed that night, I said, "Honey, I'm sorry about my family, but I think we need to do something else about it. I'm never going to see them again after this." Lo and behold, she said, "That's really wise because they're really ugly when they get into the nastiness of the business. I'm glad you found a new job, and I'm glad that it pays very well. Actually, it pays more than he ever paid me, and we're a little better in our economy." She's a nurse and does pretty well at what she does in her occupation. We decide to plan for a change of directions ahead, and we find work in another area that we're very fond of, with many hot springs that we can soak. So we move there, and our house money goes a lot further. We buy this little glass house that's so beautiful and new with so much light. It just makes both of us happy. It got views of the woods and views of the lake, and I can't even believe how sublime it is compared to where we had been living. I'm there in a new job, and it's another lumber system of business supplies of some kind instead of wood. Now I'm supplying paper or business supplies here and there, and I like that a lot better. It's very conservative and kind of quiet, and the money comes and goes, and we're very happy. Suddenly my sweetheart conceived a child, and I wasn't expecting this because we thought she was barren. I didn't really care and how it goes, because then you don't use contraceptives, and suddenly she's pregnant, and I'm going, oh my God, my life is going to change. Now I'm going to have a child of my own. What the heck does this mean as a star seed in me? But in a way, I was really grateful, because this was another avenue of something new that I would have to explore in this life of mine. The child's born beautifully because she goes to a very gifted midwife that massages her abdomen and gets the baby to turn just before the birth is to take flight. It's an easy birth, and she's not in too much pain. I'm grateful for that. She doesn't want to return to work right away, and my country kind of allows for that for a year or more. And so she's at home with my newborn, and I'm at work, and I come home at lunch just to be with them because I want to see how the little one is doing. She's happy about that and makes me a sandwich or something kind, and I tell her I'll bring lunch from a local cafe and bring it home so you don't have to try to cook at this time. She's really grateful for that and can eat something else. The baby is just wonderful, and soon he's age 4 and going into kindergarten and expressing himself. He's a little boy in my heart, and I adore him to this day. He's now 25, and I don't have a business to pass on to him, and I'm glad because I want him to go to where he needs to live his life in the way he wants to, and not follow the footsteps of myself like I followed my father's footsteps. So he's graduating as an engineer in this year of himself, and I'm very proud of him. And when he lands a job in an architectural firm that he can relate to, he's happy too, and I'm happy too. It all works well when you stand up in your truth and molder where you need to in your life. So that's the castellated version of the Yogananda parable for the fruition of everything. It's the fruition of everything that when you can stand in your truth for each change you need to make in this life of yours, that you will come out the other end into a truth that flourishes in a way that works for these dreams that you would like to spin and meet as the star seed of yourself. There are always many possibilities of places to live, or people to know, or partners to find that are beautiful and gracious for this life of yours, to feel fulfilled rather than negated through time. So the point of standing in your truth in any circumstance is to allow yourself to be more fulfilled by dreaming in a spin that resonates and harmonizes with your body. When you can dream in a spin that resonates and harmonizes with your body, you always be well and healthy. If you don't, you can grow sick. An affiliate of ours discovered in Georgia that she needed to move on, but didn't know where to go. The longer she stayed there, the more of her liver began to fail, and so she moved to where she needed to. Everything could recover. Sometimes it means relocating to a different region. Sometimes it means also change of people because something about their mindset destroys your body through time. And sometimes it also can involve a career change if what you're doing is killing you. Earlier, we shared about Asur'Ana when she was working for the family business with all of its dyssynergy patterns, that she was going to get sick if she stayed there, and she needed to make a major life change. And she got it suddenly and signed for real estate school with a friend of hers the next week because she knew she couldn't do this or do anything but grow into cancer. Therefore, that can be for any of you that aren't doing what's well for you, aren't living with people who are well for you. You aren't in the right circumstance that are well for you. You aren't in the right region that's well for you. If any of that is true, then it's time to take a stand first in you about what's true for you, or where do you really need to be with any of those issues, and what do you need to do to change it. Then begin to plan your script for another castanedated fable that can lead to success in another direction in your life dream stream. Taking a stand in your truth about certain things can sometimes be painful for those you leave behind because they rely on you in certain ways that it may be making you ill. And you don't understand exactly how it works, but that's how dream stream can be in light. If people don't resonate with your body, or region doesn't resonate with your heart. And so we leave you with all these thoughts today about who you are and where you're going and what you're doing and what do you need to do to take a stand in truth that causes you to motion in a direction that works for you. And in that, you will begin to find your way into a new play that takes you forward in another direction that harmonizes with your body, mind, and soul, and all the spirits that generate the dream stream of yourself. Don't hesitate to do what you feel will fulfill you the most in your heart, in the stage play of you. Grow in that direction until you cause it to be so, and lift up into the dreams of your heart that flower and flourish and carry you to some place that you can say, I really love my life. All right, we bless you, we nurture you. There will be many hours of healing around how dreams are seated in the new star system of the new polarity of you in the archetype of you. And we bless each of you in this journey as a star seed on earth for a new direction. Take you in the winds of time so that which is beautiful and harmonizes inside of you too. Namaste. 30. Okay, let me get 40.